what we found here, someone brought some clippings too. I found it in yesterday's New York Times, and it obviously is all over the other papers too. It's not very much of information in regards to Venus, but it is nevertheless interesting. And by radar mapping the planet, they found that about 62% or something in that area would be large lava seas or oceans of lava. And so now we can take it any way we want to. If we believe them or if we don't. According to my information, there's supposed to be a lot of water on this planet. And Dennis? Dennis? Yeah. There's supposed to be a lot of water on this planet, according to information that Mr. Adamski gave us, that had contact with the extraterrestrials so many years ago. And since then, we have sent spacecraft to this planet, and we have recorded all kinds of information that can either be believed or not believed. And the reason is why are we suspicious that what they tell us may not be true, is my own experience by investigating and studying the closest planetary body next to ours, which is the Moon, which is only 250,000 miles away. And from my studies through telescopes and endless hours of observation and studying of NASA photographs, about probably 20,000 or so that I have by now studied, there's absolutely no doubt in my mind, and many, many other people that have done the same type of research, that the Moon is not a dead planet. There's life on the Moon. It's a living place. It has a magnetic field. It has a radiation belt. It has an atmosphere and volcanic activity, moonquakes, and live volcanoes, spraying water geysers. And as far as NASA has slipped so far by releasing this information, it has life because they stated that the surveyor cameras that were picked up by the Apollo crew. Now the surveyor was an earlier exploration of the Moon by remote control surveyor spacecraft. And they sterilized this equipment, they sent it to the Moon, it soft landed there. And when NASA got there later on with the manned space flights, the Apollo, one of the Apollo crew walked over to the surveyor and picked up its camera equipment, dismantled this thing, and took it back to Houston. And they found that microbes were growing around the lens and inside the housing, everywhere around this camera. So for microbes to be growing there, and microbes are alive, as you know, those of you that have studied this a little bit deeper, that indicates that something is going on the Moon that produces those living things. And if there are microbes there, maybe there are some other things, more complicated forms. Nevertheless, the Moon is used as a base for extraterrestrials, and many, many spacecraft have been seen landing on it, taking off, and moving around in its atmosphere and above the lunar surface. And have been photographed, and have been reported and recorded by professional astronomers as well as the amateur astronomers. More than the amateurs than the professionals, because the professionals are usually interested, and their study goes into deep space exploration. They are trying to figure out the double stars and the distance of galaxies and so forth. They don't spend much time in studying the Moon. And mostly the amateur astronomers do this type of study, and they're the ones that find the activity that goes on there. And with this evidence that has not been told to us quite open, I found it, many people found it, by reading between the lines, by looking and checking and searching and going like a detective, like Sherlock Holmes, through the NASA files and everything to find this information. But they haven't openly told us in the New York Times and LA Times and headlines, we found life on the moon, there's water there, there's so forth. They have never done that. So they want us to believe that there's nothing there. And since 99% of us on this planet believe there's nothing there because they told us so, it is logical to believe that what they tell us about Venus is not true either. You know, it's just one false. In other words, once you tell a lie, nobody believes you because then they say, well, this guy that lied to us last year, now he's probably doing the same thing again. Once politicians do this to us, we won't trust them, we won't vote for them. And the officials know that to study the moon is very simple. It doesn't take much of equipment, and anyone that is willing to spend $1,000 can buy a telescope is sufficiently powerful enough to see for himself what's going on there. With some patience and determination, I can guarantee you will see things that don't belong there. And they don't care. They know we are capable of studying this little planet out there, and that we can catch them in their own trap. But they also know that we will never be able to prove what's going on the planets away from Earth, our system, and our immediate vicinity, and that's Venus and Mars and the planets further out, because they're just too far away, and no matter how much power you use on the telescope, I used mine, and I have a 17.5-inch reflector. I used the capacity of power plus a Barlow lens, it doubles it again, and so Mars, which is the size of a golf ball, now it becomes the size of a cantaloupe melon, but still you cannot see anything on the surface. It's just impossible. It's too far, too atmospheric to look through, and all this debris floating around in space, and it's just too difficult. So now we are mapping the planet Venus once again, this time with a very sophisticated radar system, and we are finding, of course, enormous mountains there, and the newest findings are the what they call volcanic domes. They're approximately 10 miles in diameter and about a half a mile to 3,000 feet in height. And they say that they are very surprised to find them remarkably shaped, identical shaped, very well like nature would not produce so easy. They can understand why these domes are so neatly there in one line, and they are more or less all of the same size. And that's their interpretation. See, what they do is they tell you in the newspapers, Pasadena, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory is interpreting these findings or these photographs or these radar images, and then they tell us their interpretation. That doesn't mean anything. We can see anything. In other words, I can pick out a little crawling bug out there and have each one of us here interpret what the purpose of this little creature is, and the interpretation will be different in most cases. In other words, they're always very careful to not so flatly state what the truth is or not is. They're just saying what we feel or we think, and there could be, and so forth. And in case they do ever get caught, then they can always say, well, we didn't have the instruments, or we didn't have the people, or we just misinterpreted this and this and that. So Venus is supposed to be a planet that is the same size of Earth, not quite, almost so. And during our last meeting, I mentioned the findings of enormous sand dunes that are spaced exactly apart as the sand dunes on our planet, on Earth. And this is something that they couldn't explain because, according to their interpretation, the aerial movements or winds on Venus aren't supposed to be more than 3 miles an hour. It's very, very still, kind of very calm, very still, due to the enormous atmospheric pressure. And so they can't explain how these sand dunes get there with a wind speed of only 3 miles an hour. So there are many, many discrepancies that we can find if we are looking for it. If we are suspicious, like we are, because we are suspicious, because we know But they're not telling us all these things. Well, let's see, there isn't any much different information that she just gave me.
Fred, at one time, weren't they telling us that it would be like a blast furnace on the surface of Venus?
Yes. Oh yeah, they told us that that the atmosphere is so dense that it is comparable to a depth of 2,000 foot below the ocean. And there are many discrepancies too, because they can't understand why there is so much light reflection from the surface, even though photographing through the clouds. And with this atmospheric pressure, there should be, in an atmosphere so dense, there should be an erosion of enormous proportions, and there would not be, no mountains of the caliber that they have found there would be visible there. Because they once believed, because of the pressure, it would be just like huge sand, lots of sand. And everything in all the mountains long ago have eroded away, and they have not found this. They have found enormous mountain ranges that across the whole belt of the planet. And this one here even says, fool's gold may cold slopes of Venus' tallest mountain. That's another interpretation. Another lava dome 15 miles wide. And so we have already talked about this earlier, but I'd like to make you aware of this again. If you study planetary physics, or the law of balance, and that is nature also. It's part of the study of nature. You find very quickly that something cannot be quite right. And to give you an example, if let's say we all of a sudden would develop a technology whereby we create an air pressure on our planet 100 times as dense as we have right now. We have right now in this room about 14.9 pounds per square inch, about 15 pounds of pressure per square inch. Let's say we are increasing this pressure to 150 pounds per square inch. It will make us very uncomfortable because we couldn't live here. Because all of a sudden the atmosphere would be so dense, it would be impossible for us to take a breath, and probably our bodies would be very uncomfortable or crush underneath the atmospheric pressure. Yet at the same time, if you would tell a scientist this is what we are going to do, he would tell you that it's not possible that this planet, of its size and its gravitational attraction capabilities, could hold such an atmosphere. Because you would have to have a much larger planet to hold an atmosphere 100 times as dense as ours. For the atmospheric molecules to be attracted by this planet and to be held here, it'd be impossible. So we could pump this whole planet around the Earth with this enormous amount of atmosphere and put all these pressures on this planet, and it wouldn't be able to stay there. Because our planet is not capable of holding it, and yet at the same time, Venus is slightly smaller than we are, and there the atmosphere is supposed to be 100 times as dense, and nobody will ever question how come it's there. It's possible. What's the magic on Venus that can hold an atmosphere 100 times as dense, and we can't do it? And you see, these discrepancies are something that you and I should ponder over. We think about it and wonder. You know, if you think logical, that you find, well, that something is not quite right. The same as with the statements of the scientists, and especially Jet Propulsion Laboratory. They've been telling us that there is no air on the moon, and nothing that is measurable, much measurable, whatever, just tiny little traces of some kind of movements of kind of gases. And because simply the moon is too small and it doesn't have enough gravity, only 1/6 of Earth, thus it's incapable of holding an atmosphere, and no life can exist. Then, as we explore the solar system and go out to Saturn and Jupiter and Neptune and further out, we find satellites that orbit these systems, and their entire systems, the Saturn system, the Jupiter system, because they are almost like a solar system in themselves, by having a giant planet around it with a dozen satellites orbit. And some of these moons, Triton and Titan, and I don't know, just offhand, half a handful of moons that they have found that are smaller than our moons. And they have dense enough atmospheres where NASA states that in the future they hope they make a parachute landing where they can land a lander on this moon. And yet again, no one questions is how it's possible that the moon of Triton and Titan of Neptune, for instance, which is only 2/3 of our moon, has an atmosphere so dense that you can land parachutes on it, and ours is too small to hold an atmosphere. And yet they find clouds there on these moons out in our solar system, and even snow on the in the mountains. So that there must be whatever explanation they give us, whether it's methane snow or whatever kind of stuff they give us, or whatever gases they invent that are supposed to be there, it doesn't make any difference. Even if it's a methane atmosphere, even if it's a hydrogen atmosphere, it doesn't matter what kind of an atmosphere is around a moon that is 2/3 the size of ours. The moon is too small to hold this type of atmosphere. It shouldn't be there, so we can't land a parachute there. And that's how you can get them. You may not pinpoint them so that they admit mistakes. They simply tell you, well, we don't know, that's what we found. But what we can do, especially us who are researching the fact that life exists in our solar system and beyond, that gives us at least something to think about when we find these things, and we can question the release of all this information that we get through the newspapers. A very interesting article came out just not long ago. That is the San Diego Union. Okay, it's on Thursday, November 8th. I don't know if you have seen it. It's called, "Is That What Life Needed? Comet Dust." Have you noticed it by any chance? It's a pretty large article here. The reason why I mention it is because when Adamski had contact with these visitors, they told him that planets, as they move through space, have large trails they leave behind. Much like what we see a comet, where we see a visible trail, but as planets move through space, they leave these trails behind of partially of their atmosphere and particles that float in the atmosphere. There are many living things that float on our atmosphere. Bacteria, microbes, molecules, and some cells that move around and float around in the atmosphere. Anyway, as the Earth moves through space and around the Sun at about 66,000 miles an hour, it leaves a trail behind it, much like a comet, and you can measure it. And they have measured it when they send spacecraft into the vicinity around these planets. And they found this to be true. All planets do that. And so partially our atmosphere, particles of it, are transported out into space. They're left behind, and they mingle in space, like in a large laboratory, chemical laboratory, biological laboratory. And so as planets travel through this whole soup that's out there floating around, they attract some of the particles back toward them. And so kind of very softly, like very soft rain or mist, these particles fall into a planet's atmosphere and then contaminate, or seed, and we can also say, this planet with the particles that come from other planets. In other words, our particles have been absorbed by Venus, Venus's particles have been absorbed by us, and the whole solar system is going through this kind of a process, and then system after system after system. So there is no end in space. This whole contamination, what we call contamination process. And when these living things go into our atmosphere, they start to grow, and so there's reason to believe that we have life elsewhere that is very much like we know here, with some variations, perhaps depending upon the environment, as nature modifies everything, so that for adapting itself to the natural conditions that exist there and the pressures, but pretty much what we know. And this article says here, dust from disintegrating comets, rich in molecular building blocks of life, may have rained into Earth's atmosphere, providing a relative gentle way for such chemicals to reach the surface without being burned up. Well, of course they don't burn up, because the mass of it is too small. They just float into our atmosphere and rain into the atmosphere. And these, the amino acids which combine to form proteins have been found just above and below the layers of comets and also meteors that come into our atmosphere. It's the fact that comets and asteroids and meteorites are full of organics. It is interesting from the point of view that the origin of life, because it means the building blocks of life are very easy to make without life. In other words, all these particles and this, everything is out there. And then as it is combined under pressure and proper condition, it turns into what we call living things. For example, cosmic rays and ultraviolet light from the sun can alter methane and ammonia ices on the surface of comets. If you break up a simple molecule of methane and ammonia and their fragments recombine, you build up larger molecules of carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, and hydrogen, which is to say organic molecules. Okay, so now they're confirmed of what Adamski has told us long ago. Matter of fact, in his last book, that was never published, we have this manuscript. He's speaking about this, how the planets are seeded with life and how this whole thing works just inside the system. So another thing that I want to talk about, I just written some notes on this, and that is the people that have come to visit us, they have stressed the importance of us understanding the harmony of nature and what it means. And then we have, what we do quickly is we look away from ourselves and we go and study nature away from us. We go into nature and we study the behavior of the plants and the animals, and we can go as far as study natural laws that are the magnetic effects of and the positive and negative effects of the create life. And what we don't really ever seriously do is study nature within ourselves. When you think about it, as you go away from your body, studying something away from you, you fail to get the basics of what nature is doing to us, what we are, and we are the product of nature, and that our bodies are made of the elements of nature, and that we are living in this body. We can shape the body, just like a sculptor can shape a figure of whatever he does or something that he sculptures into health and youth and longevity and whatever else. In other words, the key is within us, and it is so very easy to find. So when you, for instance, study plants, you know that if you spend a certain amount of time and devotion with plants, they will respond. And the feeling that you are transmitting to the plant is also received by the plant, and it will respond, and then you have a result that may be called the green thumb involvement, where the plant will react and it will all of a sudden grow and will bloom and will be just performing beautifully. And some people can do this, some others don't. We haven't tried it, but I'm sure everyone can. So if you can use this capability away from you, you can imagine if a plant will react to you and it's not attached to your body, it's away from you, what results you may be able to receive communicating with the body, with the cells of your body, and what you could learn from it. For instance, in the process of digestion, we eat foods that go into our system and they are absorbed, and nutritions are taken, the waste is removed, and so a natural process takes place, and most of us are totally unaware of how this is done and what forces are responsible, and above all, what intelligence is behind it to do it, because our minds, which we have labeled as the only intelligent thing that exists, is totally occupied with worldly things, material things, trying to make a living, and what else? Or thinking, or totally absorbed. And so consequently, whatever we take into our form is then left up to nature to bring the benefits about, to keep the body alive. And we have no idea. Maintenance of the form is really the key to good health and an understanding of nature. Can you imagine, once you understand yourself and how this whole thing works, how your understanding would be going outside, away, and studying other parts of nature? You would have a total different perspective and an understanding of how things work. All of a sudden you would understand that the laws that supply, maintain your form, are also the same laws that take care of the plants, the trees, the animals, and everything else. And all of a sudden you would find a unity between you and the other living things, and find no different intelligence expressing there. There be no longer high and low. There be no longer the concept of we are everything and there are the lower forms of life. If these forms of life around us perform the duties for which they were created, and they continuously balance nature, provide food for mankind and for everything else, the whole life system on the planet that is totally functioning without the aid of man. As a matter of fact, if man would be removed from this planet, it will function 10 times better than with us on it, because we are at the very moment like parasites trying to destroy everything that lives here. So then all of a sudden you would see that this miracle of intelligence and intelligent creation, maintenance and perpetuation of species is so enormous that you no longer could put yourself above all this creation around you, and you would become one with it and equal with it, and you understand it. And thus a blend is created between man and nature, and the whole mysteries of life are resolved just like that, very easy. So what we do is, we people, we are very religious in some ways, because whenever things go wrong with us, we blame God or whatever intelligence that we have put aside that is greater than ours for our mishappenings. Something that breaks down in our system, the body, we blame anything else except ourselves. And when we study nature, we must also, or to study the body or the natural functions of the body, we must also acknowledge that the body needs sustenance that is of a balanced nature and also needs rest. You gotta sleep, you gotta rest, you gotta take it easy every so often, and you have to eat the proper foods. You can't really afford to have too many likes and dislikes. So many people can only eat certain things and they refuse to eat anything else because they haven't been grown up with this type of foods. And there are a lot of so many groups on earth that are born and raised in certain parts of the country. And for instance, if you're born in the deserts of Saltillo, Mexico, the only food you will eat will be the cactus fruit because it's all that grows there. And you may eat some goat and some tortillas and some beans. And while other people in other parts of the country or in other parts of the world eat the food that is available in their area. And so we should be able to accept all the different things that the planet has to offer because the body needs the chemicals, it needs this type of things. Also the proper rest. You can, as today, in these days when we try to make ends meet, as I don't know what that means, I've been trying to think about it for years, trying to make ends meet, you know. We neglect the body, and we do all kinds of things. In our haste, trying to run and do everything and squeeze everything into our life and try to get everything done, we run this, we do this, we run in the garden and water the plants, we do this, we feed the animals, we do this and that, and we forget that the body in which we live requires just as much care as everything else that we care for around us. And perhaps even more, because if you're not there to feed the plants and the fish and the dogs, pretty soon there's nobody there to do it. So what we do is we're pushing harder and harder and harder, and trying to make it with less sleep, see if we can get another job that we can make the mysterious ends meet. And we can only be very, very lucky that the good Lord on this planet created a law that gives us 24-hour days and not 48-hour days, because we would be working 48 hours otherwise. You see, we only 24-hour days if we got it made at least. So somebody is shooting up here. So what we do is we try to get as much in as we possibly can and push harder and harder and harder, and then the body breaks down. It cannot take it. And we have now disturbed the natural balance of the system, and we pay a price. Now, some of us are not quite as fortunate. Some of us inherit things from our parents because they didn't understand the natural laws, and they run their bodies down to a point where they should have not had children under those conditions. But since we are a very selfish lot of people, we put children into the world regardless whether we have any kind of defects, because we want to have our own, and even if it doesn't crawl right, we got to have at least one that crawls like us. Because we are very strange creatures in that respect. And so the shortcomings or the deficiencies that exist in a body can be carried over through the heredity factor as it goes for many generations. And so sometimes we wind up with things that we are not looking for, and nevertheless it's still our responsibility to do some research and find out about the health of our parents and our grandparents and the possibilities of us having a certain weakness toward illnesses they perhaps have died of or suffered all their life, and then behave accordingly so that we can maneuver somehow kind of around. In other words, if your if your parents died of lung cancer, and it would be hope that you don't even start smoking, so because you know there's a kind of a weakness of this whole respiratory system, and smoking would be very detrimental to your health if you do that. So it requires some kind of a careful planning of how you can reach live a healthy life and get as old as possible in it. Because as long as you live in the body, the more you can learn. When you pass on a little too early, then you have to go through the process of reincarnation, and there are 20 years of time that is lost. Because the first 20 years, you're going through training the new mind, and going through the educational system, and you really don't do very much except preparing yourself for this new existence. And by the time you're done with that and you start studying the purpose for which you came, the already 20 years are lost. So everyone wants to live as long as possible in the body, because that way we learn more about ourselves. So when the body breaks down, we have to more or less blame ourselves, either for not taking actions, for not behaving properly, so that the body has a chance to recuperate the natural principles that we have observed around us, that nature is part of. They can function through us the same. In our system we have the groups of cells, and these cells are, we can label some of them being of cosmic nature and the other ones are of man-made nature, or the secondary cells. And the cosmic cells are the ones that direct all the natural or cosmic activity in the body. In other words, the cosmic cells, this group that is responsible for the maintenance of the body, they will do so because they're programmed. They will do their job, always. They will digest the food, they will heal your body, they will maintain your body. And the habitual cells, which are created in the process of living, the secondary ones, they're impressed with all the surroundings of our environment, and they take on all the good or bad habits. So we know the moment you open your eyes and you wind up in another body and you're born, it's like a television camera that all of a sudden starts filming pictures and sound. And so now you are taking in all this experience around you, and if you permit bad habits to govern you, the bad habits can choke the body. In other words, the two forces, the one force is trying to maintain the body and bring about a balance, and the other is trying to tear the body down. And the habitual cells, or the cells that are impressed so our actions and our surroundings, there are many habits that can be detrimental to us. It's not just the habits of becoming an alcoholic, which is not good, or get dependent on drugs, which is not good, or to smoke too much. Anything that is out of moderation is bad for us. But habits such as jealousy and hate and discrimination, all this is not natural and against cosmic law, because in nature there exists no jealousy. The Creator created everything with a purpose and gives life to everything that is equal, with the consciousness, that is. And jealousy and hate and these kind of things don't exist in nature. And that these are man-made inventions. We are jealous because we want things that others have. And we hate somebody because they may have not treated us right. So we have to develop a kind of an ability to overcome this. All these conditions that we permit of discrimination, they choke the cells in the body and prevent them from performing in a natural way. So, for instance, if you meet people that are extremely jealous and extremely tense, what they're doing, they're shocking the life of the cells of their body, and the natural functions are then disturbed, and then their body will break down much faster, they age much faster, they will be sick more often, and it can come to a point where it even kills them. It has been recorded that some people that are so insanely jealous that they have that this particular condition has killed them in a few years. And it's because man has thought in actions. Whatever you think, that's what you are. If you're extremely jealous, these are extremely tense, extremely hateful, these thoughts, they stop the flow of energy into the body and produce also a chemical change. As for instance, we know that we can do things that make our adrenaline rise just like that. This may not be just through physical action, but it can also be by thought. In other words, we can by thought, or we are capable by thought alone to release chemicals that are in the storehouse in our body, put aside for certain reasons, certain purposes, to overreact and to produce chemical changes that are so severe that they can poison the body and will poison the body if we permit this to happen. So now you understand why some of the people that visit us from other planets get so very, very old, and when we hear that they get hundreds of years old, many, many hundreds of years in one body, and that many of them that are 200 or 300 years old, according to our schedule, and our time schedule, don't look any older than about 40 or 45 of our times. For some reason, they're capable of stopping the deterioration process of the body. How do they do it? Lifestyle. It's not just the way others treat you. It's not just the way how atmospheres on planets are, the compositions of atmospheres. Also, there are some benefits of living on a planet where it's cloudier, where the humidity is a little bit higher, and where there's less radiation bombardment. All this, there are some benefits, but 90% of the benefits really are due to our own efforts, or their own efforts to get up to very high age. So the secret lies right within ourselves. So when you study nature, think about it, and slow down ever so often. Because on Earth we have a saying, this death is nature's way of telling you to slow down. And that is a little bit too late, you know. I'm speaking from experience, believe you me, because I've been burning the candle on two ends sometimes, trying to do so many things all at once, and we'll pay the price for it. And so I'm not just making all these things up, believe you me, I've experienced it. And I know both sides. I know exactly what happens if I follow a certain lifestyle, and I know what happens if I follow another. The behavior of how to listen to the body exactly as we should is not always easy. I give you an example. For instance, when you drive through the countryside, and lots of farms there, and then drive by a big pasture where all these cows are grazing, you and stop there for a moment and look at this also. You notice that there are some cows which are grazing. You also notice some of them are somewhere in the shade chewing their cud. And you notice a few of them are over there somewhere asleep. They don't do anything, just lay in the shade and just relax. So you find out that nature doesn't have a timetable of how and you should nourish your body, but when you're hungry, you eat. And when you're tired, you sleep. You see, and because we people, our life is so organized that we are running out of bed at 7 in the morning because that alarm clock starts ringing, Now we are told you have to have breakfast. Now it's lunch. Now it's dinner. Now you should sleep. If somebody has a strange feeling that he should sleep before that because he's tired, it's out of the question, because if you're working, you lose your job, you can go to sleep on the job. And if you eat between, the whole family gets upset because mother is cooking something, the turkey is not quite done, the kids 2 hours before are in there stuffing their faces with sandwiches, and when the turkey comes out of the oven, no one will touch it. And so we are forcing ourselves to follow a certain timetable, and many times against nature. You see, the animals, nobody forces them, they do just what they feel. The cows which are grazing will not go over to those that are underneath the tree asleep and say, wait a minute, you can't do this now. It's not dark yet, it's bright daylight, you cannot sleep, because the rest of us are eating and you are prohibited from sleeping because you got to eat now. And so, it's as funny as it may be, the people that live on higher advanced planets, they don't have schedules so much. They do have some. They have some social gatherings, they have some times when they get together and do certain things, they dance, or they have some banquets and they eat and so forth to do. But then, more or less, they're permitted to be left alone to follow the feelings of the body. And if you are tired, you're on the spaceship and you do duty, and you're all of a sudden tired and you feel you should sleep, you just go to sleep. And others will understand it, and they will take care of your job until you come back. And when they go, then you take care of theirs. There's no bookkeeping and accusations of why they do these things. And so you see, to eliminate the least, to eliminate the frictions, to have the least amount of friction in the body requires a very, very careful planning of the study of yourself, and to follow as closely as you can what the body demands. If you have to go to the bathroom, you should go. You shouldn't hop around from one leg to another for 12 hours trying to hold it. It's because you have to run from one meeting to another. You know, it's not healthy to do that. And all that stuff is very important. So, being natural is the key to good health and a good, nice, happy, long life. Then when you have achieved some kind of a balance like this, you have worked on yourself a little bit, when you go into nature, you don't have to just sit there, you just you also absorb everything, all the energies that come from it. And we've spoken about many times before of the benefits that to just lay in the grass, just flat as you are, somewhere in the park someplace. You can feel the earth and you can feel all the energy that's exchanged from the planet itself and from all the living things. And the energies are flowing through the trees, from branch to branch, from tree to tree, from root to root, as an enormous force. You look at the forest and you see thousands and thousands of trees in this particular forest, tens of thousands of trees. Each one intelligent, each one came about from a small little seed, tiny little seed, and has grown into a 50, 60, or 100-foot tree. Each one is intelligent as the cosmic activity in our bodies, because it maintains the tree just the same as our body is maintained. And if you go to this tree and you put your arms around this tree, you can feel enormous energy, not only that from this one enormous tree that flows through your body, but visualize the interconnection. The roots of this tree interconnect with the roots of the next tree, and the next, and next, and next. You have an enormous forest of energy that can flow through your body. And this principle is no different than connecting your battery to a recharger, to be recharged. But you must understand this, that this is possible, that you can connect with nature. You give and you receive. You're neutral, exactly neutral as nature is, and receive the energy that flows through it. It can heal your body, it can help you to rejuvenate your body. It's extremely important. Now, when you do hug trees, make sure there are not too many people that see you. You know, but then who cares? Right? It's all part of the natural law. And so when we think about going into outer space and visiting planets that are of higher development, it may not be at all as we feel. Most of the Earthlings that would go to a higher advanced planet would be very upset, because the lifestyle that is lived there is so totally foreign to us. Because we have so many set ideas of how we think life should be, and we can't quite understand that there's so much more to it. That what we think life is only 1/1,000,000th of the truths that exist. And that would make it very tough. And very few people that go to a planet like this would consider it to be heaven there, because there people do what they feel, and people are free. They don't hold thoughts on each other. They use telepathy. There are no secrets between people and between the government and between any groups of people. There are no secrets between the people and the animals and the other kingdoms that we call the so-called kingdom. They're all, everything is knowledge and understanding, the purpose for which everyone and everything is there. It's a kind of a total unity. And when we are placed on a planet like this and we don't belong there, that is, if we are not mentally prepared ourselves for it, and deep in our hearts feel that's what we want and that's the lifestyle that we want to live, we would be very upset to be there, and would probably consider a place like this hell instead of heaven. Because people that harbor jealousies and dislikes and discriminate against many things, that is music, that is arts, that is the looks of buildings and other people. You know, like when you walk someplace, go anywhere, you wear something that is a little strange, out of the normal style. Right away the people are very judgy. Like you go to the wild animal park, and for instance I've seen it, and a black man walks there that has just come from Africa because it's part of a team of performers, and he wears his native clothing that is worn in wherever area of Africa he comes from. The people are eyeing him from top to bottom. They're going back and forth, and you can see their minds click, 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 trying to pick him apart. Very few people are studying that person from eye to eye and see that person as an intelligent creature living in a black body, wearing a different type of haircut and clothing, and without judging the person and picking him apart. Now we do that. We just love to do it. This is what we call opinion, having our own opinions, letting our minds play around with its capability. So when you go to other worlds, you see people walking around that may look a little strange to you, because they wear their style of clothing the way that they like. They're not all dressed by C&R, and they're all like a businessman. I just came back from Reno yesterday, a day before, and over at the Barley's Hotel, I noticed they had a businessman convention, and they looked like a cloning outfit. There were about 500 guys in gray suits and blue ties, and they all looked the same, like they were punched out by a machine. Because the company requires you to look that way, you know. And so they come from other worlds. They do they wear hairstyles the way they like. They wear clothing the way they like and they feel most comfortable with, and nobody judges each other. So that is very important to know too. I have found a postcard here somebody sent me from Japan, or perhaps I brought along myself from Japan. It shows a style of buildings at the Tokyo Convention Center of free style. You see the beautiful shapes of these buildings. And this is what type of style is used to building on the other planets. We're following free style, not just in convention and buildings where people meet, but also in their homes. And buildings or shapes and forms are duplicated a lot of nature shapes, like the shape of people building structure, and many other shapes of shells and seashells and forms of nature that are duplicated in the construction. So when we fly over an area, or for instance, there are buildings on the moon that are strange-looking things, and unless you familiarize yourself with the different style of construction, you would never identify it as a building, because we think that it has to be a block by 4 so high and it stands there. And if it doesn't look that way, it isn't a building. Do you, by any chance, have any questions before I continue the preach here? Okay, one at a time.
I was in the first book where they spoke about Mr. Adamski meeting this guy from Venus, and they said something about the footprints. Were the footprints ever translated, or whatever they said? Also, that little plate the guy threw out the window, the photograph plate, had the writing and stuff on it. Was any of that ever translated?
Yeah, they worked on it for quite a while. The hieroglyphics on the photographic plate is a form of Venusian shorthand, so or rather symbols which have multiple meanings, a condensed form of writing. I have seen their writing, the regular writing too, and it doesn't look quite like this, so I know that it's type of a shorthand thing. So the footprints they have been working on, had been worked on by the University of Seoul in Korea, and by a South African scientist called Basil van den Berg, who had translated the hieroglyphics and had built a light motor, or a small engine that is a free energy device, from this information. And the hieroglyphics were also interpreted to some extent in regards to the propulsion system and the philosophy and the lifestyle of the people. And incidentally, the close relationship of energies that motivate our body in comparison to the energies that motivate their spacecraft. In other words, they gave us some information that the propulsion methods of their spacecraft was exactly the same method that propels us. The breath of life, the life that flows through us, that keeps us alive, keeps the machines moving. The same principle.
Are those available anywhere, all that translation on it?
Basil van den Berg, the scientist who built this little engine, disappeared, and in Switzerland, when he on his way to America to reveal this invention, or his findings rather, and we haven't heard of him since. And the other hieroglyphics were only partially translated. And the space people told Adamski that there were people on this planet that had the knowledge of combining all this information and get some good results from it. I have very much a suspicion that those people that did find the absolute truth of these things are working for the government or have been working for the government for a long time, perhaps not of their own free will, because of that knowledge that is extremely important for a super secret development in our space program.
Do you have any copies of the castings or anything?
We have photographs of the footprints and drawings of it, but the cast itself no longer exists. It was lost during a fire up in Adamski Foundation here in Vista in 1970.
How about the alphabet? Do you have anything?
Pardon me?
Do you have the alphabet? You said you saw their alphabet. Do you have any copies of that?
Yeah,
Do you
that
remember any
thing
of it?
that says about the 12 planet, I have it, and I have the information of the state rendezvous.
Yeah, you have it, Monique?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, you can bring it along next time.
Yeah.
I have it too, but if she, to find yours, because it's easier than mine, because I'm going through all my
I
files.
also can get you the copy of Marcel Homet, the French top archaeologist, that in his expedition to the other side of Amazon River, and what he find in the caves, the exact duplication of the signs that they were given to Adamski. He find it in the cave, and Marcel Homet, of course, he didn't know what those signs were. In his book, he said that he thinks it's an ancient language. So I can get you a copy
Yeah,
of that
that's
too.
good.
It was 10 years after that sign was given to George Adamski.
I work with symbols and things like that a lot, so
Mhm.
I'd be interested in seeing it.
Mhm. Okay, well, we'll get this to you, and then you can enlighten us with
I'll
your
write you Venusian letters.
interpretation,
By the way, you know that thing that you mentioned is cosmic bulletin about Arizona? They were showing that on TV.
Mhm.
They have even created something like an ocean wave,
Yeah,
how does
yes.
it come? And only 6 people can live under this complex at a time. And they have all kinds of birds and species and so on.
Mhm.
Maybe some of the people of other planet, they do artificial life like this,
Well,
They
inside
create
the
one.
spaceships, Monique, they have set up like this.
Oh, in the spaceship?
Yeah, like in these enormous cylinders that they travel space with, they have an ecology system inside that is totally producing the foodstuffs and also purifying the air. And so the crew of the ship is determined by the size of the system. In other words, the ship may be a couple of miles in length, and so the space it's inside between the walls where they grow foods, where they purify the air, and there permits a crew of 250, and that they will be on board. More or less 250 people, because that's the balance that is necessary. So they have this knowledge a long time.
Well, anyhow, they said that the government spent about, I think, $100 million to build this building.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well,
it
the
was
government
very
had nothing to do
interesting.
with it, because it's a
Pardon?
private venture of the
Well,
Texas
I mean,
billionaire.
it was government funded
Oh, yeah.
for this. And then also I was in this UFO convention in Arizona. I came back last night, and there was some even Major Kehoe was down there, and I heard that they put Adamski down, and I told them privately, I heard that you put Adamski down, and I used to teach his teaching in college. They said, oh, you did? So anyhow, I sit down in one session with them, and they were saying the government really doesn't know how to figure this out. The Air Force doesn't know how to figure this out. There's pro and con and this and that. And there's so much misconception of this UFO that, that if there is something real true, they don't know how to figure it out. So I got really upset, especially when I heard they talk bad about Adamski. I told them I'm from George Adamski's foundation. If they don't have the information, I have the whole thing here and the whole proof. I have the things from Bible and the Adamski and all that. So all of a sudden, when the meeting was finished, the crowd came around my table, and I gave them lots of information about Adamski.
Monique, there are people here from other planets which are not of noble intent, and they're not coming from very far. As a matter of fact, their planet will be close to ours very soon, only about 45 million miles from us. And then once again in the year 2001, the planet will be close, only 42 million miles from us. And they have 80% of the people that live there do not want us to come their way, and 20% do. So the relationship of the system that they have there is very much as we have on Earth. 80% of the people here want war, and 20% don't. You go out there and interview the people. Should we go to Kuwait and take the oil? Yes, let them have it, but let's get them right. You know, that's about 80% of the people. And 20% wait a minute. Let's not jump to conclusion. Let's see if we can get a peaceful solution of the same. Just like the situation we have here. 20% nobility, 80% hostility, and the people that live on it. I have it right here. Notes from Adamski's lectures, July 14, 1963. It says here, 20% of the people of Mars want us to come their way, and 80% don't. So they have people on Earth to confuse any attempts. They have people on Earth to confuse any attempts.
I think most of them work for Air Force.
Well, probably. So they
are warriors, you know.
So there's definitely an opposition here, and this is the reason why the Dennis, would you like to?
Definitely an opposition, yes.
Well, maybe they want to come in through the back door. And so we have definitely some discrepancies there. When Adamski is talking about the people that he met from the different planets, and also some of them that are from the planet Mars, he told us later that they could not go back to their planet because for their work in unifying things and getting people together of the system, they had to stay away from their planet because they had to go into exile. They couldn't go back to their planet.
Wow.
So things have changed, you know. Now, you see, look at how we live on this planet. We have had World War II, where the Allies got together as big friends. Then we had the Cold War, and for many, many years we had this tension between the nations. Now we have some kind of a friendship situation between the superpowers. And things have happened today that nobody ever dreamt would happen. I heard ex-President Carter yesterday on television, when they asked him if it was correct that Gorbachev received the Nobel Peace Prize, and he said it was 3 years overdue. He should have gotten it 3 years ago. Because no man has ever done so much in such a short time of such great importance than he has done. In our world, where things have become so complicated and difficult, I'm not talking about the Caesar who takes an army and invades the rest of the world because he has no opposition. Today we have a lot of opposition. So you see, a lot of things have changed on this planet in the course of the last 50 years. And if you think about another mind society that lives very much like we do, that thinks, feels, and acts very much like we do, changes will take place there too. In a short time of 40 and 50 years, a lot of changes can take place. So according to Adamski's statement, 80% don't want us to come their way. That's pretty much correct. And they have people here to attempt and to confuse the attempt.
Oh, when I showed this article, moon water discovered, I said there was 10 miles of water cloud around a power astronaut water geysers in some of the craters the astronaut had found. This guy who was opposing Adamski and all this thing, he said, well, I have an explanation for that.
Yeah,
what
I know.
did the astronauts say? I said, I know, you have lots of explanations.
I know the
for
explanation.
everything
One of them had the
to
bladder
confuse the
problem, right?
people. Huh?
One of them had the bladder problem.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah. That's where the
So I left the conversation.
geyser came
I said
from,
to
you know.
my friend to ask me
So we found it water on the moon.
Or
Sure.
they imagine, or it was reflection of the light, those photographs they took, you know.
Well, I have talked to many different people.
And
They
you know,
have.
these people attracted lots of people, a big crowd come and listen to them.
Mhm.
And anytime
Well, who was the major
come-
speaker? Cooper?
No, it wasn't Cooper. I've forgotten the name of the major, but I know Major Kehoe was there.
Well,
He
Kehoe
was-
has died a long time ago.
Oh, it is?
Yeah. Major Kehoe died a long
There's a
time
Wayne
ago.
Aho.
But then who was that?
There's an Aho. Wayne.
Maybe
Wayne Aho.
I don't know.
Oh, this one,
They
yeah.
told me Kehoe. I don't know. But anyhow, they were all from Air Force, and they had a psychiatrist to show different pictures, how it looks to different people.
Mhm.
Like people sit in the right-hand side, they see the same, like a photograph very young, the people in this side, they see it very old, how deceiving is this
Yeah, oh yeah,
UFO
sure.
to the eye of different people, you know.
Sure.
It was very well organized.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but
It was really
From
well
time to time,
organized,
you
and
mentioned Tesla. Now, I'm in
Yeah,
the middle of
right.
reading a
Very
book right
good,
now
yeah.
about Tesla,
Mhm.
and there was something, I don't know if I misunderstood it or not, but there was something mentioned about Tesla being from another planet. I'm not sure I caught that right, but was he born here from another planet, or
well,
was he
this
from
is
another planet, or what?
people that from there. Those people that have known Tesla and his capabilities, his understanding of the cosmic laws and so forth, they claimed that he was not from this planet.
Well, there was a large following of fans way back in the 1800s that used to say, they used to call him their own special Venusian.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was really interesting for the 1800s, but he was born here on Earth, wasn't he?
Well, it is possible. You see, to get birth certificates and to get residential papers or so, that is not very difficult. And it's kind of hard to say whether he came by spacecraft or whether he was born here.
Well, he talks, there are papers from his own writings where he is very close to his mother, and he goes to see her before she dies and things like that.
So
So
he has to be born here, yeah.
I figured he
Has
was
to be
born here, yeah.
Right. But
he
you see,
was-
it is his body was born here, but it is not from here.
Right, right.
Mhm.
Very unusual, beautiful person.
You see, but it's the person that lives in the body that is of importance. It's not that the body is born here or not. It's who moves into it and who activates it and brings along what knowledge, music, science, whatever, you know.
But you know, a while ago when you were talking about the way of life of these people, perhaps everyone in here has seen this film, but if they haven't, The Day the Earth Stood Still, it's an old movie. Probably have all seen it, but it's absolutely fabulous in presenting
Mm-hmm.
how these people are when they come here, what happens to them, what they try to do, and speaking to all the world governments, not just special ones. I pull that movie out every once in a while and play it. Michael Rennie.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
And that's just the way it is, from my understanding.
Oh, yeah, still it has
It's
not
absolutely
changed.
fabulous. If you haven't seen this, you can get it in all the video stores, Blockbuster,
Mhm.
Warehouse, they all have it under science fiction, of course, but it's an excellent movie.
But the footage of it, the beginning, the footage is real.
Really.
Yeah, when you see the beginning when the spacecraft is moving through the sky, that is real. And
It had to have somebody behind this, because
it happened. This really happened in Alaska. The landing of the spacecraft, very much like this movie describes, it happened in Alaska.
My movie, they show, it was Washington, I think. I mean, the movie, they
Yeah,
explained
Washington,
it
D.C.,
was in
right.
Washington,
Yeah.
D.C., which
Mhm.
was in Alaska.
Right,
actually.
right.
What about your own conversations? You say, I heard you mention that you've met these people. Why did they meet you so fast and sort of disappear? Don't they ever sit down with you and talk to you?
No,
Like an
what
hour,
happened
2
is
days?
that I met them during the time when I worked with Mr. Adamski. And I know I worked with him for a few years. And during the time, I had the chance of meeting some of the people. I think what happened is that Adamski was not a healthy person, and especially in 1965. In early 1965, he felt that he was leaving. Because we were celebrating his birthday together in our house, and he had and it was a strange thing that my wife had made him a birthday cake, and he blew out the candles, and some candles came back on. And I said, George, what does this mean? He says, well, it looks like I'm going to kick the bucket soon. That was his expression, just as plain as that. And so I said to him, do you know where you're going? He said, yes, he knew where he was going. And he had, the last year of our relationship, he put an enormous amount of effort in to get us as close to him as possible all the time, whenever there was an opportunity to get as much across of information across that he felt was important and necessary at this time. And I think that the people that he met with didn't mind so that we could see them as well. And so I had some experiences with them. I can honestly tell you, not to know where they came from, I know that they were not from here, because I could see what they could perform, making themselves invisible, they could do all kinds of things that we on Earth, I'm sure, are not capable of doing. I have no doubt that these were people that were not of this Earth. I don't know exactly what planet they came from. It is something that they say, then we have to take it, that they come from Venus and from some of the planets in our system. And so I learned a lot from this relationship. And that wasn't always a hit and run kind of a thing. Sometimes it lasted for hours.
What about the guy with the long hair, the first one he met? Was there some significance with the hair being so long?
Yes, it had something to do, something in regards of fulfilling biblical prophecy. He had cut his hair short since then for a long, long time, and he walks around like anyone else. His hair is not very, very short, but it's not long, somewhere in between.
Why don't they have names though? I mean, like we do, like, address each other by names.
They do, depending on what planet they come from. On Venus they have no names, because they have no IDs, they have no driver's license.
How do they address each other then?
They're by thought.
Picture.
I mean, like, what do they start out with? Hey, you, or what?
No, they don't.
Picture, yeah.
No, by thought. In other words, they have been taught from childhood that telepathy is the only the form of communication that is reliable. And then what they do is the image of the person that they know is the key for telepathic contact. And so whether they are in another room or whether they are in a crowd of people or whether they are on another planet, if their picture in their mind, the image of the person they want to contact, they are taught to be in a neutral state 99% of their life. In other words, they keep themselves neutral so that everything that comes, the thoughts coming to them, are received and they know where they come from. And they will pick up their image, they will pick up the sender's image, and they know there is a communication going on, and it is better than any radio contact that man ever invented. It can be done from one world to another without, in a twinkle of an eye, without static, without interruption. The best way of communication that there exists.
And it can't be tapped.
Yes, it can be tapped.
Yeah, well, not
It
by,
can be tapped
not
by everyone on
conventional
this
means.
planet. No,
Mhm.
but it can be tapped by anyone on the planet. In other words, the thought that is sent on a 360-degree basis. Because you send a sending station like an omni station, like a radio station, and anyone can pick it up, but
But they don't.
but
I mean,
but they don't pay attention to it because it's not
doesn't
meant for
concern
them.
them.
It doesn't concern them, and that's why there are no secrets. You can't possibly see a politician on television telling you what he is going to do when elected, because you know what he thinks, and everybody will immediately dethrone him right on before he even gets up there, because they know it's a big liar already.
Are you familiar with the term samadhi in Eastern thought or practice or religion? What they call like a oneness with God. They call it samadhi.
Well, it is all part of the universal laws, and everyone has a little bit of it.
Well, would that be like eternal, the type of state that they're in all the time then? I mean, it's like if you're consciously aware of everything, being
Correct.
God. And that's,
Correct.
That's just it.
Yes, they know that God is cosmic intelligence and another person, and it expresses through all things equally. And the key, if there's a key, the key is to be attuned to it at all the time.
And
Like-
they can move their bodies around different places at will without a spaceship.
Yeah, some of them can. Some of them can go interplanetary without a spaceship.
Yeah.
But it is an entire individual development, just
Well,
like.
the Catholic saints and the Eastern things do that. They practice that.
Yeah, some of them can. But spaceships are needed because as there are different stages of development, as you go through stages of learning the different aspects of the cosmic laws, there is time involved. In other words, to overcome jealousy, to overcome hate, to overcome discrimination, to learn the mastery of the four elements, to learn the mastery of levitation and so forth, requires a long, long time. It's not just something you can study a book and 5 years later you become a master and you know everything.
Right.
It takes lifetimes, many, many reincarnations, sometimes for many, many hundreds of years before you master one after another, because you must not only understand these laws, you must be able to practice them as well. And so you would say that 90% of those that live on the other planets need spacecraft to travel, because they got to have the comfort of a spacecraft to be in. There are some that we will call masters, the master develop in the master stage of development, they can get from one place to another by teleportation, by teleporting their whole body from one place to another, even from one spaceship to another while they're out in space. So somebody can teleport himself into the spacecraft, they can give some instructions, they have a nice evening together, and then the person disappears. It's no longer part of the group because it's someplace else. But there are not many that can do it. And to do something like this requires a total knowledge of a mastery of the elements, because of taking your body into an energy state and by thought transport it from one place to another, and keeping your soul or your spirit or intelligence together with the particles that make up your body, so that when you put them back together, you don't arrive there dead. You're alive, you're in the form. Requires an enormous amount of energy that is involved. Energies that are so enormous that it would annihilate any one of us in this room on the spot. In other words, kill you. It's like touching a wire of 100,000 volts or something. It will just annihilate us on the spot. And people that can do things like this they are total masters of the elements, and there are not many of those around. And yet again, the others fashion themselves, for them they are teachers, and they are trying to strive to study their lifestyle and to study how they have managed so that they can eventually one of these days reach that too. That's why there is no stagnation in what we call a society of perfection, because there is no perfection. If we take a native out of the jungle and bring him in the center of San Diego, he thinks we must be perfect. Fly big planes, have enormous skyscrapers, and we just turn the water on and water runs out. We flush a toilet, never seen in his life before, so he thinks we are the masters of everything. And yet we know how little we really know about life. And so we have been experimenting in our laboratories with teleportation, and we have managed to, as the government has been doing this, and we managed to teleport objects, chairs and tables and certain things from one place to another. But so far, sending a person alive from one place to another, we haven't been able to do it.
But Philadelphia experiment.
Well, what happens is that it separates. In that process, it separates the consciousness from the body, and that is immediate death. The reincarnation in a split second, you go on someplace else because the body has been taken away from you. And they keep the body and the mind all together, and it's not an easy thing. It requires a lot of. You can also walk straight through the wall. You can walk on water. You can walk through a wall this thick of rock. Because if you know the vibration, if you know that stone is made out of particles, and particles of stone vibrate at this very, very low rate, and because of that low, very slow vibration, they become solid, so that for us there's an enormous wall there. But you can also lower the vibration of your body so that you can blend with it and walk right through the wall. Or you can higher the vibration and go through a wall of extreme high energy forces. But it all requires a lot of knowledge. And I personally am intrigued by all this, and I think one of these lifetimes in the future I would spend to try to learn these things, because I'd like to know it.
But they can also send that thought form. That thought comes and form and give you a message and disappear.
That too, yes. Thought form is part of
That's the easiest way.
is something in between telepathy and teleportation.
Yeah.
Telepathy is receiving your thought, teleportation is receiving everything, and the thought form, or sending a thought with the form, is the projection of the form. It's like a holographic projection of yourself, like a television picture that is received from New York, and then every one of us here in California can pick up the same person. In other words, it's not real, it is just an image. It's possible, but these are afterthought projections, because people have that in their mind when they leave, and they project themselves, and others who are attuned to it can pick this up.
Why did, when Mr. Adamski lived up here, like he'd go all the way into LA and then he'd go all the way out to the desert, wouldn't it be easier to go like around through San Diego and out that way to the desert? I mean, why such a long trip just to go around where he's going?
Well, it was up to them. You see, they had certain landing areas, but they would come down and they would take him. But it wasn't up to him. He was getting the information. He was taken and they drove him out there in a car for a long time, going into the desert areas, and they took him out into space.
Just so they could pick him up off the mountain a lot faster.
Yeah.
In those days, I mean, the mountain seemed like it was less, occupied than it is now.
I think that probably he had he didn't want this to or they didn't want it. I don't know. It's possible. They could have done it. I don't know. I know that that these spacecraft give off a lot of sparks, and they are highly electrical, and it can cause fires very easy. And up there where he lives, up in the hills, there's a lot of grass, and you have to be very careful to land someplace not to cause some kind of brush fires. And who knows that the landings of these spacecraft were not with the government's approval, and that because after all, when the first contact took place, the government already knew about it because they had their aircraft up in the sky circling the area. And one of the pilots later on came to visit Adamski, and he gave him his card, and he said, I was one of the guys that was up in the jet photographing everything when you were up there having the contact. And so that he realized that they already knew in advance. And so this contacts probably took place a long time already before him with other officials and other people. And if the government wants to be friendly, they would say, listen, we will give you an area in the mountains around our Air Force base there, a desolated area out there, the testing grounds are, and though you can land and nobody will see you. That way they know who is coming into the atmosphere, they know who is landing there because they monitor their activity, and at the same time the public will be kept away because they probably will say, please stay away from the public, they're not prepared, they're panicky, they need to be carefully prepared, and we are the government on this earth, and it should be given our opportunity to educate our people and prepare them for this event to come. And there consequently, it's possible that Adamski was taken out into the desert areas close to the Air Force bases in the mountains up there, for this reason.
I know of a scientist from University of Berkeley. I went for a mining research with some group, and very, very isolated area, and that guy lived in a little shack, and we talk about UFO. I don't know what brought that up. And he was very reluctant to talk to me and so on, and finally he said that I'm put here by government, and the spaceship, the big ship, they come here, and then get a scout ship, they just park and go,
Mm-hmm.
So Las Vegas is very close to some of those bases. Had you ever been to those mountains? It's
Yes,
really,
yeah.
I mean, it's such an isolated area. There's nobody is living around there.
Right. Well, and then other things too is if one of the craft should go and if something wrong with it mechanically and it should crash and it would be stuck in a populated area, it would be more difficult to get it back because they would have to get a big ship in and they'd have to send a beam down to disintegrate it, and so it doesn't fall into our hands. So I mean, they have their reasons. They have to do whatever they do. He didn't question them. He always went along with them, and they drove him for endless hours. I remember once he said he was out there for almost 2 hours. They were driving into the desert, going deeper into it, and then side roads, and they had the car following them. And there was about not quite a mile or so behind them, and it stopped. And so he said to the space people, who are these behind us? Have you noticed it? And they said, yeah, that's the FBI. And they're taking infrared pictures of our contact, and when you go on board the spaceship, they will take photographs so the government knows you're not lying. We know who they are, but we don't mind. So we don't know what kind of setups they had that Adamski doesn't even know. He told me, he says, I told you some of the things, but I didn't tell you everything. God knows how much he knew.
When are you going to put this other manuscript out, this one you said that?
I won't, because it is not very good. It has something to do with, the title of the manuscript is Space War Inevitable. And it deals with the negative side of the people that live out there in space, and describes that they're not all friendly, and also describes the methods they use to confuse us. And so he had to make a choice. He had to either stay with the group that contacted him, that came here for the purpose of aiding the civilization and helping us to grow, ought to stick with those that come here to create a lot of stink. And he decided to not to publish a manuscript, especially after he had written it. He showed it to them, and they told him, George, don't publish it. It will only cause a lot of friction between his earlier statements and things. And so, we don't, as long as I know what's in there. That's why I say it. And in all noble, I know there are a lot of stinkers here that create problems, and they are capable of changing things around too. They can intercept messages. They can follow our spacecraft out in space, and can take it out of orbit or out of its location. They can change its frequencies. They can move it around so we lose contact with it. They can move it back so we gain contact. They can repair it out in space and put it back into orbit. They can do all kinds of things. And information is sent to us, sometimes perhaps so deliberately wrong, so that it confuses us and also some of the scientists. And it is because of this information, that's why this information, the truths about all the spacecraft have not been released.
Why didn't they say the people in that last, NASA, the one that blew out the shuttle?
Why didn't they say
Why
that?
didn't they say that?
Well, they probably would have done so if they would have been in outer space. But the spacecraft blew up at such a very low altitude, and we're still within our lower atmosphere, and it would have probably been impossible. They said they would have saved people out in space, and Adamski always said that they have ships out there and they would save us if we are out in space and they have some problems. Then we are in their domain. We are no longer out. These days I don't understand it, because everything is so totally confused. The opposition is in this program so deep. They're confusing the people so successfully that there isn't much to fear anymore, because they have it all they have it all sorted out. They have it all under control. They're feeding us false information. We believe everything they say, most of us. So we don't live the teachings that we should live to elevate ourselves above the lifestyle that we have. Only a handful of us know better, and most people have never even thought about it. So everything is in perfect control. I don't understand why they get all panicky.
I have no idea.
And the museum is nothing. They can, for instance,
let's say you build the UFO and Bible, it would be very bad for church people.
Let's assume that you put up a museum, right? You spend all this money, you build the building, then you get all this collection of material to put into a museum, and the day it opens up, for some reason they have this strange fire, and the whole darn thing burns down to the ground. And another one of the actions have been successful has been completed. The day you stand, it'll take you another 15 years to rebuild it and get all the material by the time you passed away.
That is my
Hell, they do anything they want. If they want to, they can stop anything right from the moment on. Or they stop your building permit, or find some kind of something wrong with the building which isn't quite up to par with the building construction code, and they delay it for 459 years or something. They're perfect, If they don't want something done, believe you me, they know how. They don't fail, they don't miss, they don't make any mistakes, because they got more money than we do. Don't be afraid, because look, any person that has ever come up with something new, that is waking up the public to the truth in one way or another, there's opposition. If you go out there today and tell people that organized religion is not good for you, and you present it very carefully, and if you publish a couple of books to tell the people of how the faith healers work, and how they find out the information about those they're going to heal long before, and they know everything so that it looks like a miracle on television, and in reality it's nothing but a clever setup, pretty soon you have all these guys following you, because you have the truth and they don't want to be caught. So anything you bring up, if I go to the moon tomorrow and I come back with a photo album of pictures of what's going on the moon, and then they're going to be after me, and say, oh, this guy is really getting tough now. Before he was using our pictures, that's easy to deny, but now he's using his, and they look real. What are we going to do now?
Maybe you should start a religion or something, make money that way.
No, this organization.
I don't think the earth could tolerate another religion. One more and we'd be
That's
finished.
There's enough competition in there.
Yeah.
What is angel hair supposed to be? That was real popular. documented.
Well, Dennis probably knows about this. He cuts off a lot.
No, you're not going to do
Angel
that.
hair.
I put it on my Christmas tree, Christmas time, I don't know.
Angel hair is kind of a substance that is released from some of the spacecraft to avoid radar detection.
To avoid what?
Radar detection,
Is that right?
yeah.
How does that work?
Well, very much like, for instance, when you have a plane like Air Force One, let's say, flies to Colombia for the drug convention, and they're afraid that some guys will shoot them down, what they do is they release foil. They can release foil particles that look like angel hair. What it does, it confuses the missiles. If you shoot missiles at an airplane, and you release foil particles around it, it totally screws up the sensor system of the missiles, and thus they can escape. Maybe that's what it means. I don't know, and I don't know if those that released angel hair are not one of our experimental craft from some country or another, or maybe perhaps ours, because the ones that come here from the other planets don't need to release stuff like this, because the field that builds around the spacecraft itself is of such construction that it would totally direct radar signals around it. It doesn't hit the craft, but what it does, it bends it. It bends it around it in continuous while the craft is hovering right in front of the radar station. You can see it hovering there, and there's not a signal that comes back. It just goes right around it.
I haven't heard about it in years, but it was real popular in the 50s. They used to
Yeah.
talk about it all that pictures of
It may have been that some of the experimental craft that were taken over from Europe from World War II, tested by the governments, and then they had tested all kinds of different devices to avoid detection and things. May have been ours.
That could be, that would work, because I think I told you on the way to work once, I remember people saying they used to put, when radar first came out that the police had, they put crumpled up aluminum foil
In the hubcaps.
behind their hubcaps.
Yeah.
Put them back on, it would mess up the radar.
Oh,
Right.
maybe that's what I should do.
Oh, by the way, it's illegal. You're not supposed to do that.
Well, who knows?
And when things are illegal, you know it works. Otherwise, they wouldn't be illegal.
Well, I just put it down there. I thought it's fun.
Fred, do you think we're headed for a big depression in this country?
Yeah.
We are heading for some big, yeah, definitely.
I mean, like the Great Depression?
Maybe doesn't.
Not quite like this, because we have a different structure today. Because we are dealing with the international trade of trading, and the setup on the planet is now quite different. So that from the financial point of view, we have already passed the Great Depression. The stock market crashes we had in the last couple of years were so severe that would it have been in the 1920s, it would have been worse than the Depression at that time. But because we have a different policy now, a money policy, and we're getting so many other countries involved economically that things will be tough, but not quite as bad as. But look, America, we're living still pretty good here. We're more than gone because we pay $1.50 for a gallon of gasoline. In Sweden, gas costs $4 a gallon already for years, and nobody says anything.
Well, people are saying that if there really is an outbreak of the war in the Persian Gulf, then that would kind of deflect a depression here in this country. They always say it's either a war or a depression. And so
I don't think if there's a war, there's depression, because the gun companies make so much money to overcome the depression. That war is, if it's gonna go, is done by Americans for profit making. They
Well,
will send their troops down there, they can make their own oil here, they don't have to go down there.
Well, what happens is that we are, not just from the military point of view, we are having a very bad policy, international policy, because especially in America, permitting so many items and goods to flow over our market and putting Americans out of work, while we ourselves do not enforce policies that would be beneficial to us. For instance, Japan and the United States. We're permitting every bit of junk that Japan manufactures to be dumped on our market at any price, and anything. And yet, the products that America has, that is our great values, agricultural products, natural resources and things that we need, right? In Japan, they can build nothing without having our steel, without having our building material. They can't build anything without having food to eat. We have everything. If we would be smart enough to trade it equally, it'd be, they say, okay, you want how many Toyotas you want to dump on the market? 5 million? Okay, you got to buy 60,000 tons of beef, 50,000 tons of this, 90,000 tons of this. The Japs say, sorry, we don't want your food. They say, sorry, we don't want your cars. Very simple. Trade on the equal bond. We have knowledge, and America, remember what they're doing. They're intimidating the people of this country. They're doing a damn good job. We were number one in agriculture, and are number one. We're the best bridge builders and road builders in the world. We put automobiles up that have been in the world the best cars that people fought to drive. The big cars that used to be built. All this has been put down to now. Americans are not brought it down. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to do things anymore. And they, for some reason, some kind of a bad policies in government that does it to us. And yet we have everything. America can seal its borders tomorrow and not need a darn thing from anybody, any place in the world. We don't need oil. We can grow corn and let our farmers turn it into alcohol and do it like they do in Brazil and put alcohol in our engines and drive like they do. We have plenty of oil here. We have all the resources. We don't need to buy anything from anybody, anywhere. But we do. We have a terrific screwed-up system like this.
I think the gun companies, they promote all this wars.
Well, not just alone, Malika. The defense industry is part of it, and
But the defense industry runs on gun companies. They have to have the guns.
well, that's all the
used.
same. Yeah, it's all the same. It's not just that alone.
What's a little scary, Fred, is that when I read the papers every day, it's so depressing because they're laying people off everywhere.
Yeah,
Manufacturing, the high white-collar people, everything.
yeah.
So it almost seems like a depression.
Well, it is because there is at the moment it's kind of a stall in the spending, and that is that the corporations don't want to spend money. They hold on to it. The people don't spend money. And a lot of people that would have bought a car this year said, well, let's wait out and see what's going to happen. Let's stall this vacation. Let's not spend the money. And that's multiplied by millions and hundreds of millions of people that make a big difference. And right now, this is going to be a very bad Christmas, business-wise. And in January, it's going to be awful. You know, buy, and people just don't buy. And so, what can I do? What can we do? You know, we are part of the system, and we have to just try to make the best of it.
Somebody
Go on
was
unemployment, I
asking
guess, or whatever, if they lay us off.
Somebody was asking me, what do you think about this war in Kuwait, in Persian Gulf? What should we do with it? I said that, well, the head of the governments, you have to take all their brains out and put new brain there and computerize it differently for love and not war, and then maybe you won't have
Monique,
war.
there's all a setup, you know. We have, because of the Soviet, the ease on the Soviet pressures and the situations back in Europe, we were confronted with enormous disarmaments. We have to, because we cannot simply continue to say that we need all these troops now that the Ruskies no longer after us, according to the politicians. And so we can't afford it. We can't disarm, and because pulling the people out of the military and starting the defense industry is we've been geared for so long, it would be detrimental to our economy for sure. And so this the Kuwait situation is a beautiful setup to, number one, involve hundreds of thousands of troops, which we now all of a sudden need. People in the Congress are satisfied that we no longer can cut the military. As a matter of fact, we need more of it, because since there are always some madmen around. And also the cancelled projects that are very, very expensive for our economy are now continue to be built, such as the stealth bomber and all this stuff. We don't need the stealth bomber anymore. In other words, if we want to drop atomic weapons, we can do it right now. We don't need this machine. We don't need it against the Russians, certainly, and certainly not against Iraq. But yet they cost billions of dollars apiece, and we can't really afford it, but it's still done, because it's a policy that we follow. You know. And so they have it all figured out. After they take Kuwait, and I'm sure they will, because they don't put all these troops there for nothing, they will then set up some kind of a new system and install the government over there again, and people will be happy, and then they will run out and say, oh, the tensions are released, gas is cheaper now, let's go and buy and spent, and everything is just like it was before.
Besides, in Kuwait, there's lots of money. Those Kuwaitis are rich. So they always attack the countries that they have lots of money, not like in Iran. They took all the profit out of there. They
Yeah.
killed all the young people. Now they are after Kuwait.
Yeah, right.
So it's a silly word, silly
Yeah,
planet.
yes, and
If the philosophy that they brought down to us is supposed to be so important, now why isn't more of it out? I mean, I didn't even know this existed until I happened to accidentally run into your group.
Well, it is available, but it's not out in the open because the educational system is not picking it up. In other words, if this information is given to the school system and to the libraries, it will not be accepted.
I haven't even seen it in New Age bookstores or anything. I don't know, maybe I'm not looking at the right shelf or something.
Well,
You know.
partly it is also because of the lack of finances, you know. We have this information, and it is available, and we're doing it the best as we can because it does cost a lot of money to get things printed. And so since we don't have a lot of money to do it, little by little this information is coming out. Usually the people that ought to find it anyhow. Because when you reach a certain stage in your life where you have this urgency to seek for this type of information, you will find it. It will come to you in some way or another. So we have now almost 1 o'clock, people. So we have to, when your next client comes in, right? So
In a little bit, not
Mhm.
right away, but unfortunately, we do have to cut it a little short today. Next time in December, you can stay for 3 hours. We'll have festivities, a tree, goodies, but
okay.
today I
Also,
do
Dennis,
more
I
people
wanted to
after.
actually show the people. Some of the people have never seen the films, and I wondered
that
if it
would
would
be
be
a
a
good
good idea if we can get a television set in a VCR over here.
Sure, I'll have it ready.
Right, because that is the best way to show them the tape, because
Would
it's
be
too
on the
bright right now to show.
16th too,
Pardon
the
me?
third Sunday.
Yes.
So that everybody
So
remembers.
Sunday in
it.
December.
A month from today.
Right.
Exactly.
Mhm.
We'll have a nice
Right.
party.
Then we will bring the films along and the television set so you people can see it. And that's about it.
More informal.
But right now, it's best to keep your eyes open and see what's going to happen with the economy. We have gone through stages like this during the oil embargo in the 70s, and then in the early 80s, we had something like this very similar. It happens, and this is an on and off thing in this country.
Well, you know what I noticed too, when I watch television, I flip the channels, past week or two or even longer, past couple of weeks, and all you can see is that we are being programmed for war because they're bringing all the old war movies back again.
Oh, yes.
And
Oh, yeah.
everything, it's getting the people ready for war.
They probably
Yes,
put
yes.
it on the air, subliminal,
Oh, yeah,
good
definitely,
word,
definitely,
good word.
sure.
People are also speaking their minds out, watch,
Yeah.
watch the debates that are going on.
They're
Oh,
against
yeah.
it, yeah.
And then also watch the letters to the editor, and if you feel strongly, put your thoughts in writing and
Yeah.
send it in.
Right.
Because the killing contest hasn't started yet.
I'd like to make you aware of it that Saudi Arabia its oil output was about 5.5 million barrels a day. They are pumping up long ago the slack of the oil that is missing from Kuwait. We do not have a shortage of oil, not a shortage of gasoline, and the prices should be going down.
Right.
The thing is right now is the high prices of fuel is putting a lot of organizations out of business. The transportation industry, the trucking, the airlines, a lot of hardship is America is going through right now unnecessarily, because
It's like dominoes, one thing
Right.
just falls.
and it's kind of hard to believe that the government, which is so quick to invade other countries and to force policy upon other nations, that they're incapable of keeping a healthy economical situation at home. I cannot quite understand it. How they permit millions of people to be laid off by large corporations just the day before Christmas, doing more harm to the people of this country than the communists have done in the last 50 years to us. You see? And yet, for some reason or another, up in Washington, they just
Maybe they don't
tolerate. They don't care. They
I think
tolerate
maybe
all
some
this.
of them
They
make
don't care
lots
because
of
they're
money
rich,
on
they've
what
got
they're
money,
You
it
know,
doesn't affect
And,
them.
and I would think the government is not only there for foreign policy, but also the policy of their own nation to make sure that everything is maintained in a kind of an orderly way. And for some reason, I don't quite understand it, why they always fail to do that.
Priorities.
Well, they've got the money, they don't-
Priorities.
Why, maybe it's politically better to do something away than doing it at home. Why give something to the poor here? If we have Things are like that has been going on for so many thousands of years. It's always like that.
Hey, Fred?
Yes.
How do you think the Venusian would negotiate in the Middle East?
They wouldn't have even let it happen. But under those circumstances, not a bit of war. No, I think that Iraq would negotiate some kind of a treaty by permitting them an entrance to the Gulf, and perhaps giving them a little island someplace where they can set up bases so they have direct access to the Gulf. That they would exchange that for Kuwait and pull out of Kuwait. It's a possibility that would be the best way to do.
Or
You see,
unite the
the
people
thing
of
is
the world.
economical. We don't even know how deep this is all involved economically. It ricochets and then goes into everywhere. This is all set up. So it would be, I don't know. Maybe they're working on it right now to try to get a peaceful solution. But with all the troops that we are moving there, it's very unlikely, because why would we move all the soldiers there for fun? Because they might got to go for some reason. Plus, we all know Congress is going on vacation soon, and then they can move in there without declaring war. Democrats are trying to keep everything up and open so that they don't have to. They have to do it legally. And the weather in Saudi Arabia is getting worse in the summer. If they don't move now in the winter, in the summer our soldiers will die there without fighting, because the temperature is so enormous. You sit in a tank and it boils you inside because it's so hot. So something's going to happen around Christmas or in the beginning of the new year.
You
And
know,
I just hope it's not
Kuwaitis
war.
are so rich that they're made, everybody can afford them, made from England or Germany. They're that rich. They're attacking to get their money from them. And I think that Saddam Hussein is just an agent for the United States, was put up so it looks
I heard somebody
like
else
they
say
did
that.
it.
Well, the thing is that during the time when Hussein was fighting Iran, he was a close ally, and we were going in and out all the time. It's kind of hard to believe how all of a sudden a man becomes an insane Hitler, and before he was a good friend.
Yeah.
Either you are Hitler and born as one, or you're not.
Yeah.
You better make up your mind.
So just follow it very carefully. And
Yeah,
just
right. I don't. I
pray.
listened to an interview with him for. I'm sure you've seen it on television too, the British broadcasting system, and he doesn't look like an insane man to me. Not any more insane than anybody else. He has his reasons. He says, how come you're running after us, taking Kuwait? Well, you permit Israel to take Palestine, and they don't have a place to go, and you condone that. And then, of course, this is a very touchy subject, because they're in the Holy Land. You better don't ever say anything against that. And so there is this kind of a stuff going on there.
It's a mess.
I feel sorry for our boys who have to be over there, and they don't know what in the world's going to happen to them.
I'm gonna
That's
say
very,
young
you know
kids.
what,
Right.
too. I read some of the letters are right back.
Okay, people, I appreciate that you came, and we'll see each other in December, and then we'll see some movies, and have a little talk here, and have a little Christmas party. And now I will have to leave, and so will you, because unless you get your hair made,
Yeah, I got
Dennis
work.
doesn't mind putting all your hair in the curlers and charge you $25.
Thank you, Fred.
You're welcome.
Is anybody here is new? I give some information.
The tapes? Yeah, we have to make copies now. Take a little while to make a copy. And if I can mail it to you before,
I'll be here next week.